An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 119. I'm Aaron Pollier.
And I'm Darlene.
And we watched, as Darlene was trying to say last time, we watched the movie that was double featured with Brides of Dracula from last episode, The Leech Woman from 1960.
Black and white, 77 minutes.
And I've seen this before on MST3K. So I kind of knew the devastation that we were getting into. That being said, without the jokes there and the kind of breaks that you get from MST3K, it isn't the worst film we've seen. But I have complaints. I have notes.
Well, your first complaint was the dialogue between...
Oh, God, yeah, we haven't even gotten into it.
the very first scene between the wife and the husband.
Darlene, have you seen this before? Have you watched the MST3K?
I haven't seen the MST.
Okay.
But I think I have seen this because of the, oh my God, drunken woman.
Okay. So a lot of the actors and actresses in this movie have actually done quite a bit. A lot of TV, a lot of movies. Okay, so that's not a huge deal. The director, Edward Dean, he's done a lot of TV. He's done some movies.
You know what? I don't think I ever finished the movie, though. Because I
What?
don't remember the end of it. When I watched it before.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever watched the end of it.
Well, now you have. He's directed a lot of things, mostly television. The writer, though, we know. And I'm a little surprised because he did the screenplay for another movie that we love from 1960, George Pal's The Time Machine. Now, I will have to admit that a screenwriter, even if they have something that is a classic that they're working from, does do a lot of work to adapt that to the screen, hence the screenwriter credit. But this is not a George Pal movie. This is not Time Machine. This is The Leech Woman. And wow. I mean, there. Like I said, there's problems.
I don't even get the name of it.
I get it. I said it like 5 times through the movie. Like, oh, look, she's sucking the pineal juice out of this man's neck. Oh, look, she's the Leech Woman because she's doing that. And you kept kind of looking at me blankly like you didn't get the...
I still, that isn't what I would have...
No, because you would expect somebody that's actually like a freaking leech or something, being that this is 1960 and a cheapo B movie. But
yes. So the name of the movie will disappoint you if you're looking for
like a giant leech.
Some woman that gets her fangs into.
Yeah, I mean, but she does. Just
it's a ring. Though.
Yeah. So my notes are actually pretty short for this movie, being that there's a lot of meaningless stuff that happens. Like this movie, how long did you say it was? 77 minutes?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
She's yawning. This could have been a half-hour TV movie. Maybe a 2-parter with commercials. Like like a full hour of television with commercials.
Or you could have used that time to make them understand what was going on.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, with what we got, this is a 1-hour TV episode. Okay. Yes, you should have been able to use the time that you were given for the good purposes, but as with most modern television as well, they do not use the time given to them to actually tell story. They use it to pad out what little they do have. So we'll start talking about the plot. We are introduced to some of our main characters by seeing an old woman going to see a man named Dr. Paul Talbot, an endocrinologist. Dr. Talbot is introduced by talking to his wife, and I'm going to use talking with giant air quotes because of this conversation, air quotes.
On both sides,
effectively ensures that there is no way in hell that we will care a damn about either of these characters, because they both are abusive to each other, both mentally and implied physically. They hate each other. They're in a loveless marriage.
She's asking for a divorce.
And he's wanting it to happen. He's begging her to leave.
Yes, he is the one that's begging her.
And she is an alcoholic, and he clearly does not give a crap.
And she don't either, because all she cares about is her alcohol, and all he cares about is his work.
I don't even know if he really cares about his work or not. I think he cares more about fame. These characters are terrible, and like I said, this is what are their names? Dr. Paul Talbot and June Talbot, his wife.
And she's got the nerve to criticize him about butchering
guinea pigs,
and she's wearing at least 4 foxes.
It's a mink stole that still has the heads of the minks on.
No, it's fox.
Oh, I thought they were minks. It doesn't matter. They're clearly real animals that are like draped all around it.
Yes, she has the audacity to.
You know what? If he was dissecting guinea pigs in the name of science, at least he was doing it in the name of science and not for freaking fashion. Like, okay, again, I hate all of these people. I don't think there's honestly a character in here that is in this movie that is a redeemable character. The best that we get is maybe the guide. But we realize the guide is also an underhanded bastard.
Well, you expect that in the first part.
Yeah, he's still underhanded, but at least he's not like a murderous SOB.
So what you expect from him
is about what you get.
You get somewhat of a care in there a little bit.
A little bit, because he comes across as understanding the consequences of what everyone else is asking him to do. Does that help in the end? No, because the other characters are far more black hats than he is and are willing to off him on a whim. Okay. I know we're getting away from the plot, but I have to talk about that fact that these two characters are introduced to us in such a way as to ensure that we hate them. We hate all of them. I want to see them fail. And
I think the direction that they were supposed to be making with the Dr. Talbot was he was supposed to make a kind of like a joking about his wife's drinking problem, but it didn't come off that way.
So again, we're stepping away from the plot again. Whose fault is all of this? If you had to place the blame on this awful relationship, is it the Doctor or is it June? And I have a theory on it, but I want to hear your idea first.
I think it started with him, with his want to deal with his project, and then she got into drinking
because she was needy.
That
means it's not his fault. He was actually just doing his job.
And then it just spirals down, and then he doesn't know what to do with her drinking
or her
and
verbal abuse, her emotional abuse to him,
or her want for.
She's clearly
sexual driven.
Yeah, she's clearly kind of an easy woman. At least that it's implied that she's trying to sleep with multiple other men. But no one else wants to, because she is such a sloppy drunk that, at least according to her husband, that she's often found in her own waist. So that's like the only thing that's really stopping her. Again, how do we like these people?
She's supposed to be 10 years older or something like that. I got that she was supposed to be.
She's not much older. She's not supposed to be much older than him, but she's older.
But he's actually the person that's playing it is 40. something,
and she's like 30.
36.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you're going to do that, this is the first thing of directing that I've got to say.
Okay.
Is put the age of the person, get the age if you're going to want to have this dynamic. Don't use makeup to do it either.
So the entire point of this film, let's just get it out of the way. The entire point of this film is that Dr. Talbot is searching for cures to aging. Okay. That he wants to halt human aging. Okay.
And
fair enough. This is a laudable goal. Correct?
Mala from Africa,
Mala. Yeah.
Old Mala, comes to him because she knows it and wants to go home. She was a captured slave
There's no
140 years ago.
There's no reason for her to have ever come to his office. Unless she wanted to literally get victims. And therefore, she's an evil person to begin with. But I mean, later on, again, we find that she's an evil person. She comes to his office, claims she's 140 years old, later on claims to be 152 years old, then says, no, 140 years ago I was made a slave and captured. But her tribe in Africa has a powder that halts aging.
Halts aging, and that's what she's been taking.
And she says, but we have something better. We have something that reverses aging.
And then you find out when they go to Africa.
Yeah, they go to Africa.
They go to Africa. They find that they're following Mala.
Yeah, because she has gone back on her own. There's, again, if she went to this doctor to like get a trip back to Africa because she's broke or whatever, okay, but she doesn't. She just goes off to Africa on her own.
I think she got money from him.
I don't know.
I think she got money from him.
So they go back. They go through a whole bunch of stock footage.
Yes, laughable stock footage.
It's not bad.
Because one part you're in the savannah, they're in the jungle. Then you go back to the savannah.
So Dr. Talbot, June, and a guide that they hire. His name is what? I don't know.
I have no idea. I just called him the guide.
Guide. Yeah, I think it's the guide. Just that's all I wrote it down as. He says, "Hey, look, I need a guide to go out to this tribe. I will pay you $5,000 now and $25,000 when we get back." Okay, I mean that's good
You
money.
forgot to add one other character.
Oh, did
Neil
I?
Frost, which is the lawyer.
Doesn't matter at this point.
It matters later on, I guess,
Yeah,
because
she's trying to sleep with him, and she's also like the family lawyer, and he doesn't want to get involved in the middle of all of this because A, it's a conflict of freaking interest. B, she's constantly trying to hit on him.
And she's constantly drunk.
She's constantly drunk, and he's actually trying to get married.
Yes. To the secretary of Dr. Talbot. Or assistant.
All these people are terrible. You know, maybe the lawyer isn't that bad because he's honestly not trying to involve himself.
But then later on.
Well, how later on? Yeah, I mean, later on he is pretty awful again. Yeah, you're right. Everyone in this movie is just like a terrible human being. The side characters, like the cops, are the cops awful? No, not. I guess they're not. They're just doing their job, and they come in with and actually present a search warrant. So
and
I guess
he's a very bad lawyer because he doesn't read the search warrant.
No, because he's like, "Why are you here?" He goes, he hands him the search warrant, and then he keeps trying to ask the question. Look on the goddamn search warrant,
because it will state it.
Anyway, we're getting away from the plot is so weak. They go to Africa. They take this guide. They go through a whole bunch of stock footage. They find the tribe and their village out in the middle of the bush.
After finding a whole bunch of dead tribesmen are from Mali, or I don't know.
No, it's not exactly that. But they end up having some dead animals. They don't really explain why. So there is a ritual that is done in this village, and an old woman, in this case Mala, basically has to mix the pollen of this rare orchid with the juice from a pineal gland. Okay, that's how it's explained. And she basically kills a tribesman by puncturing like the back of his skull with this ring.
And to the tribes people, this is an honor to be killed this way.
Yes. Now
to give 3 or 4 days worth of youth
Well,
to
that's
an
what
old
what I'm
person.
trying to get to, is that this ritual is said to only turn back the clock for like 2 days, but you're basically a young adult again. And then afterwards, you turn to dust.
And I think it only happens with women.
Well, that's never said, but that's what seems to be the case. And that it only works if you kill and drain the pineal gland of a man, and that is made clear later on.
Maybe it works later. Works opposite
No.
on it with the.
No, okay, so it doesn't. It doesn't. So what happens is that June says, "I want to have this because I want to be young again," and the Mala, the young woman Mala now says, "Okay, that's fine, but you have to choose a man." And she says, "Okay, I choose my husband." And ha ha ha, and they murder him, drain his pineal gland, and she becomes young again. And it's her and the guide. They break out of the village because they're being kept there because this secret cannot be left. The guide blows up dynamite, and they escape by taking this ring and a whole bunch of the powder. And after a couple days, she goes back to normal, except she's older than she was before. And the guide like runs away because holy shit, this woman's terrifying because she's just suddenly aged. It looks like, she's suddenly like 60 instead of like being 40. There's something wrong. He gets caught in quicksand. He gets convinced by her to throw the whatever the pouch that has everything in it, and she rescues him only to puncture his pineal gland
and kill him, and then throw him back into the
quicksand. But then she becomes young again. She flies back to the United States, basically sluts herself up to break up the engagement between the lawyer and...
Well, she introduces herself to the lawyer
like
as
the
the niece.
Yeah. And it's this awful sequence of murders, basically, that she just keeps murdering people wherever she can.
And she kills what gets her is she kills the fiance. And
it doesn't work.
And it doesn't actually work.
And the cops come in at this point because
they got a search warrant because the guy that she killed off the street, was a criminal that they were watching, and her card was in his pocket.
Yeah, so they're like, we want to question her about it, and so we're here to look for her and any evidence that might be tied to this.
They were more of concerned that he got a hold of money from an old lady.
Yeah, and they end up finding her body in a closet, and
the Sally or whatever.
Yeah. Her name was Sally. And so June runs upstairs, reverts back. She looks like she's freaking like 120 at this point, and she throws herself off the balcony through a glass table in the backyard, killing herself. The end.
The end.
Like, I know I went through this plot quickly. I hate it. And the reason is like, if there were likable characters in this,
it would have been enjoyable.
But all the characters, you're hoping for them to die, or at least to be out of the film, because these are all terrible people, and the people they get murdered deserve what they get.
If Neil, the lawyer Neil Foster, if he didn't actually come on to the niece.
No, because
and break up his fiance.
He would have been fine.
He would have been fine.
He was actually trying to be a decent lawyer and like a compassionate human being, but then I guess June, when she's young, has Orion slave girl powers on men. I don't know. It's never explained. Like how does this one guy that's firmly in love with Sally, his fiance,
and Sally
firmly in love, that in less than an hour, he's just like, screw it. I'm not even going to cheat. I'm going to cheat and make sure that Sally knows I am not marrying her and that she can go F off.
And then that's why Sally went
crap.
and attacked. Went to the.
So there's lots of things in this movie that make me question like some of the filmmaking decisions that were made. Is this movie well shot? Yeah, it is. It uses decent stock footage. If there's anything that I would say works in this movie, is I think it's an interesting concept. I don't have anything wrong with. There's nothing wrong with this concept. You know, hey, I'm going to have a femme fatale.
It's a different twist on a vampire.
Yes, and it's a femme fatale, and she's getting revenge on people that have wronged her. The problem is that she's just as wrong as everybody else, and she's vain.
So if they didn't make her a drunk in the first place,
no, she's still evil.
Okay.
Like, she chose to kill people to...
Let's just put it... Can I have this word? If she wasn't a drunk off the thing, and you were having the doctor use her as a guinea pig...
Okay.
You would have felt a little bit better for her.
Yeah, she's kind of tragic. That would have been a tragic kind of story.
And then she was forced... Because there kind of was forced into being this...
She wasn't forced to do shit.
Well, if she was,
yeah, that would be a different story. But you're right. That would have been a better film. You would feel that she's kind of a tragic character. She's been forced into this, but the movie doesn't do that. The movie, it makes sure. And
maybe the chemicals of the powder in the thing.
It's like addictive.
It makes it addictive and makes it.
But the movie doesn't do that.
Yeah.
The movie basically takes the route of everyone is just a piece of crap, and you shouldn't like any of these characters. I don't know if there's any better way of explaining it. And there isn't much that I think stands out as working besides the concept at its base isn't bad.
So this is one of those movies that they could remake.
Yes, I would actually have no problem with this movie being remade, but I think in concept, if you boiled it again down to this concept, I'm sure it has been remade. Because this is effectively a female vampire story.
This would be great for a Star Trek episode.
It's the salt creature. It's the salt vampire.
Oh.
It's been done. TOS. You know, it's... I mean, because this is... It's not about being young. The salt vampire is not about being young. The salt vampire is more about, like, hey, I need salt to live, and I'll drain it out of people because I'm desperate just to live. It's not that I'm being vain. It's not that I'm being drunk. Yeah, the salt vampire can get into people's minds and, like, make itself look like whatever it wants to look like. But it's desperate just to eat.
Is that the one that actually looks like a leech?
Yeah, it's got the suckers on its fingers and everything. Yeah. It's a good episode of Star Trek. I mean, God, this movie had things in it that could have worked. And the screenwriter clearly had talent because they also did the screenplay for Time Machine. Okay? There's nothing wrong with
and they had decent actors.
Monster on Campus was written by the same guy, Darlene. We actually liked Monster on Campus. I mean, there's some weird things about it. He wrote an episode of The Outer Limits. Rodan, he wrote some of the dialogue for the English version of Rodan. We haven't reviewed Rodan for this show, but that's another one of the kaiju movies. Like, the guy clearly has skill. And it was probably that, and again, I don't know, this is conjecture, he was probably given the concept and told, write it in 2 days. That's what this feels like. It kind of feels like a first draft, and then the actors put whatever they wanted to on top of it. That's conjecture, though.
It'd be interesting to find out what actually made this so
unlikable.
Well, we know the first thing that comes to your mind is on that first scene, you don't like the characters.
None of the characters are like, yeah, everything is unlikable.
And it's not the acting of them.
No, because like I said, all the skill that you see on screen, the acting, the directing, the production, like how it's edited and all that, it's at least average. At least average, and I would say sometimes it rises to being, okay, yeah, that's good. But it doesn't rise to this works level, right? I don't think anything works on this movie as it works category except for the base concept. What doesn't work in this movie is
Everything else.
no. I mean, what doesn't work is how the whole screenplay is written, which means the characterization, the pacing. The pacing's terrible. I think the use of stock footage was fine, but I mean, does anything else like truly stand out as being this doesn't work? Because I mean, it all comes down to the writing. Like the writing just isn't good, because that's the actors can only do so much with the stuff that they have. The production team obviously said, yeah, the script is fine. All these characters be unlikable and evil, fine. Whatever, go with it. And as an actor, you kind of go, well, I'm getting a paycheck, I'll do it, right? I'm not going to blame the actors for this. This is clearly a skilled screenwriter, at least a decent screenwriter, that produced utter garbage for this. Is anything else as bad as that in this movie that lives up to this does not work?
No.
Everything else is just kind of average,
Yeah,
right?
most
Like
of it's just average.
Am I going to forget this film? It's
Yes.
not. No, I don't think
That's
so.
what I was referring to.
Is it
I did
forgettable?
forget it.
See, I don't think so.
That or I didn't finish watching the movie, and I don't know which one it is.
Because I think there's a couple things in it that are going to stick with me, and that's I think that comes down to the concept of it. I really like. I shouldn't say really like. What's going to stick with me is like that end shot of the old woman smashed through the glass table in the backyard, because that was kind of shocking.
Thing that didn't work for me.
What?
When they were doing the tribal dancing stuff, you would go from the real tribe to
the
this fake,
footage. Yeah,
the stock footage to a fake.
To the actors, we should say, the actors that were on a stage somewhere doing this.
And it.
Yeah, you're right.
That did not work.
That was jarring. That was jarring, and I think it's because maybe they just didn't have enough footage of the actors.
Well, it wasn't even the actors being there. It was actors playing out the tribe.
Yeah.
And the dancing and all that. And it's like they didn't have enough stock footage of a tribal dance.
Sure.
And it looked like a war dance, actually.
Boy, this movie. Did any of the actors none of the actors stood out or did poorly though, did they? Like, not really.
Not poor. I didn't see any poor acting. I saw the woman that played when she was supposed to be playing a drunk. I think but
she was described as being a sloppy drunk, and overacting that is okay. I bought the performance of her being so shit-faced that she could barely stand. Like, yeah, okay.
It comes off as that first scene was the first thing that they actually filmed, because they still felt like they were getting into the character.
Yeah. And when she's back home in the beginning part of the movie with the lawyer, and she's like stumbling over words, and she's like just falling into him, and
that felt more like the sloppy drunk.
Ugh, God, she's just a terrible person. I mean, obviously she is supposed to be the villain of this movie. I think her husband was just being a scientist and was kind of a jerk, but not like a villain. Whereas, yeah, I mean, she was the villain. She was out there choosing to just continue to murder people.
But he chose to not give her the divorce, and you take her along to this Africa use her as a guinea pig.
It's because she wanted to be young again, and he thought that if this was real, she'd be happy. That's what it came across as to me, like that maybe this would fix our marriage.
It could have been said a little bit more, like a discussion going through.
Yeah.
Instead of having her scream at him in Africa about being a guinea pig and all that.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. It should have been explained better, because then it would have given a proper motivation to the doctor for why he actually did bring his wife, whether it was ulterior motives or because it would make her happy. Because you can't deny that how I just explained it, how he wanted to save his marriage, is actually completely plausible.
Yes,
with what we're given.
It didn't give it.
No, it didn't. But that's what I took away from it.
I did not. I took it as two people very unhappy and wanting revenge on each other.
Sure, and that's entirely possible too. I still think they're both awful people. God, I hate all these people.
Okay,
I don't want to talk about them anymore.
Okay, let's. Then,
Are we recommending this movie?
Not really.
No.
No.
It's not that good.
I recommend for somebody to watch it and then remake it.
Like, yeah, I mean, but I mean, remaking it, you're remaking it as a female vampire film,
Or
not the Leech one. But no, I see. No.
you can actually even use the same concept
You could tie it in with Fear and Loathing.
that you have to
Fear and
actually
Loathing in Las
kill
Vegas.
somebody.
Set it in the late 60s, early 70s, okay? And you have a woman who's the Leech woman, and she's going around and murdering everybody for adrenochrome, which is the fake drug in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the one that's making him go "Eee!" And this is like the psychopathic murderer that's running around and just murdering people for their adrenal glands. Like, and she's a psychopathic killer, and the cops are trying to find her, and she's selling all this weird drug on the streets, and she is a monster. Like, not a monster as in a real monster, but let's say she's a monster as in
A serial killer.
serial killer.
Yeah.
And it's a late 60s, early 70s period piece of this woman in bell bottoms, like,
Yeah, and it would
freaking
have to go
roaming
with
the
that
American
one
Southwest.
because
Like,
you wouldn't have the technology to actually.
yeah, no cell phones. You have cops just kind of sitting out on these desert highways watching for like weird traffic, or like a woman just prowling around a lonely
And
desert restaurant.
first making it think that it wasn't a woman because all these men are like buffed up or.
Yeah, and it turns out that she actually is, because she's hopped up on adrenochrome herself all the time. Like, I mean, there's ways you could make this movie kind of cool. Like, I do like that idea of tying it in with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But anyway, what can a modern filmmaker take away from this? Have a likable character. Have somebody that you want to actually like feel sorry for or root for. When you have nobody that you're trying to root for or that you can connect with, that does a disservice to your movie. When your main character is a person who is a murderer just because she wants to look good again, like that she's vain, how are you going to try to connect with that character? Because she is the main character in this movie.
Yes.
June Talbot's the main character.
And the doctor was absolutely a two-dimensional character.
He was just, yeah, he's just a terrible person. And then, like, yeah, you have the old woman from Africa. She's terrible. Because she's just out there murdering people too. The guide was in it for money and then sort of love, but he murdered tribes people. Like he murdered some like native peoples with dynamite. Yeah. Like, and he stole their cultural artifacts.
Yep.
Like he's a douchebag too. The lawyer thinks with his dick in the end, maybe because of Orion slave girl stuff. I don't know. It's not explained, but there's no reason for him to have done what he did in the short of time as he did. Like it all just doesn't really make sense. It does feel a lot like a first draft that you could have probably turned some of that stock footage into time, talking about how maybe she does have like mystical powers when she's young, that she can like get into men's heads and control them, or something, and make it a little more mystical than what the little bit of mysticism is in this. So many different things you can do, and I'm babbling about all the things you can
you're
change.
Babbling.
So we don't know what we're going to do next, folks. We're going to do something, but
it's got to be a classic.
It's going to be a classic because it's going to be episode 120. Yep. So I'm Aaron.
And I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.